Before I begin, I'd like to thank the Golden Triangle Bid, DMPED, DSLB, the Mayor's Office, DDOT, Councilmember Pinto, and for many of you all for supporting the Golden Triangle program, Grow Golden, that recruited small businesses like mine to infill vacant spaces in an effort to revitalize downtown DC. I am very clear that it is because of these organizations' shoulders that I stand on. The quick and dirty. I support the K Street Transitway project and investments included in the mayor's budget proposal for new innovation in downtown DC. Ask yourselves, how can DC be on the comeback without innovation and forward thinking? The short answer is, it cannot. I'm April Richardson, a business attorney, food hall developer, and more importantly, owner of the infamous DC Sweet Potato Cake, a bakery and cafe that sits right over there on 17th and K, whose front door faces Farragut Square. When I signed my lease in 2021, K Street was a ghost town. The normal business noise of downtown DC was replaced with a quiet that rang so loud up and down these streets that I could hear my internal voice loud and clear. But despite the quiet, each day we decided to open our doors. I remember clearly what it felt like on a Thursday. I had 5 employees waiting at the register for customers, and on that day, only 6 customers showed up. Had it only been that particular Thursdays and only one incident, my mind would not have been so troubled. But instead, that same scenario repeated itself over and over and over again. Where are all of the people, and why aren't they coming back to K Street, one of DC's most prominent streets? The street where law students dreamed of getting their first job, the street where nonprofits envisioned being headquartered, the street where companies from around the world chose to be located, and for businesses like mine, a place that I could have never imagined having a brick and mortar. It was always K Street that was out of reach for myself and other micro businesses, but now K Street has become my reality. It has become my home. You see, people, a movement is not just about an uprising of people. A movement is about making the decision to get things done by changing mindsets and by helping people see a vision that their eyes may not be able to process. And sometimes when your vision doesn't offer clarity, we rely on our leaders as a guiding light to walk us through shadows of doubt. So, Mayor, the people have entrusted you not just once, not just twice, but many times. You have earned the trust. You have made things happen. And when you solidified your mark at Black Lives Matter, you bossed up only like Mayor Bowser could do. In 2020, I stood on the B in Black Lives Matter during the protests for racial justice. And I remember feeling the power of the march. I remember feeling a shift in my mindset due to the dynamic energy of the march. I remember the chants, the cries, the feeling of unfairness. I read the signs. I listened to the speeches. But more importantly, while standing on that B, I felt compelled to believe in the impossible. And at that moment, I decided to open my bakery in downtown DC to be close to the B in Black Lives Matter, because of what it stood for. It stood for power. It stood for vision. But more importantly, it stood for Bowser. She put her mark on the ground to proclaim DC as the people's city. To some, it was a controversial move. To others, it was well supported. But for me, it represented when a boss like Bauer makes a big decision, better things were to come to this city. I deliver to you the incomparable Mayor Bowser.
Oh, thank you, April. Thank you. Wow, we're talking about one great street, Black Lives Matter Plaza, and another, K Street. So let's give April a big round of applause and thank her for her vision and making a decision about her business to be in downtown Washington. We're at another beautiful public space in the downtown, and I am proud to be here to talk to you about what we think is a transformational investment in downtown DC. I am joined, and I'm pleased to be, by the council member for Ward 2 and for most of K Street, Brooke Pinto. Give her a big round of applause. As well as members of my administration, including the city administrator, our budget director, the deputy mayor for economic development, the deputy mayor for infrastructure, as well as our DSLBD director and members of the downtown DC bid. Please give them all a big round of applause. We were here some time ago talking about the K Street Transit Way and why it is so important to transform this very critical part of not just the downtown DC's infrastructure, but the east-west connections for Washington, DC. And what we're talking about is the future of downtown and all of DC. At the start of this year, we released our 5-year economic development strategy that I've coined our comeback plan, that relies on 3 pillars: changing downtown spaces, filling empty spaces, and bringing people back to the downtown. And even though we're talking a lot about our downtown, what shouldn't get lost is what we're talking about is our ability to invest in people and programs across all 8 wards. It's Small Business Week right here in Washington, D.C., and we know that 35% of our businesses are in the downtown. Our downtown contributes 37% of all property tax revenue collected in the district. And what this budget season has shown us is that when commercial property values dip in the downtown, it affects our ability to invest in programs and services, including schools, public safety, and other transportation investments. It means the difference between modernizing a school or not, having bigger or smaller DPW services. It's the difference between having more money in our housing production trust fund to create more affordable housing units. It means whether we're able to supersize our summer camp offerings or more programs for young people. And these are the very real choices that we have to make each and every year. So when we're talking about our comeback in downtown, we're not just talking about Ward 2. You heard me say this in my inaugural remarks, that the downtown and how robustly it has grown over many, many years has allowed us to be first in class in so many areas. So when we are talking about the Transit Way on K Street, it's not just for people who work in the downtown. In fact, we started this project. When we started the project, 40% of the people who traveled east and west across DC were using K Street buses. And we know that still is so very true in terms of how important that east-west traffic is. Even people who love buses don't love buses when they are stuck in traffic and are not reliable, even if they're free. My experience with transit riders is they want safety, reliability first, and convenience. It's still true that having wider sidewalks and 2 dedicated bus lanes down the middle of K Street will make traveling for everyone safer. It is still true that building a more sustainable future for DC means having the infrastructure to support public transit. So the K Street Transitway model is a first of its kind in DC, and it's not an overstatement to say that it will transform how our city thinks about public transportation. And for those reasons, the proposal at the council right now to eliminate the K Street Transitway, this is not a delay. Let me be very clear. This will kill the project. Is not the way to move our city forward. We have to be smart right now to make the types of investments for the long term. And we have to be strategic in the best way to use limited capital dollars for the biggest impact. In the same vein, this is not the time to make it more expensive for people, especially our workers, to use rideshare to get in and out of the downtown. In fact, not just the downtown, but its surrounding neighborhoods. Today marks exactly 15 years since we ended the taxi zone system in DC. We tried that zone system. It didn't make sense at all. It wasn't transparent, it was confusing, and it led to people getting out of their rides at random spots just to beat the charges. So we can't be haphazard. We can't just say casually that we're going to add a few dollars to this person or that person when we're trying to get them to come back to work in the downtown. We make it harder for people to use rideshare like Uber and Lyft, and make it harder to use the bus. What are we doing, and what message are we sending to downtown? We have to take our comeback seriously. So you can count on me to oppose and oppose vigorously any downtown killers in this budget process. Killing the K Street Transitway is a downtown killer. Adding $2 to your Uber or Lyft ride is a downtown killer. And we're going to oppose those downtown killers. So with that, we're going to talk a little bit more about what the project is, and we'll be able to take a few questions. But I wanted to turn to your council member for Ward 2, Brooke Pinto.
Thank you so much, Mayor Bowser, and thank you for your and your team's continuous support for a downtown comeback. It is so imperative to all of our goals in DC that downtown comes back, and having your clear-eyed leadership on that fundamental goal is so important, and I'm so grateful for it. I'm Brooke Pinto. I'm the council member representing Ward 2. Oh, thank you. Representing Ward 2, but downtown is the downtown for all of DC. This is not just a Ward 2 neighborhood. This is all of our downtown, and we all need to take its recovery very seriously. I echo Mayor Bowser's concerns about defunding the K Street Transitway and implementing a fee on ride shares in and out of downtown. Without dedicated investments, and that's what these are, investments in our downtown, not only will current residents and businesses suffer, but we will also continue to face budget cycles with more hard choices in years to come. Compromising our downtown is compromising the long-term economic future of our city. I went to services yesterday morning at the Shiloh Baptist Church, and the Reverend was talking about the song "Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow" and how important that is to get through tough times. And I was thinking about how relevant that is to our discussion here today, and how important that is that we get that calculation right. We cannot afford to stop thinking about tomorrow when it comes to our downtown and when it comes to the investments that we're making today. That has to be central to our strategy here. We also know that we can't return to a pre-pandemic reality. That's why I introduced the Build the Recovery Act to help downtown be reimagined. And there are a lot of great pieces in this budget that I've been able to work with Mayor Bowser and other colleagues on, whether that's abatements for downtown conversions, whether that's public safety grants for downtown. But we need the K Street Transitway as part of that strategy. It's designed to make a key throughway more accessible for pedestrians, drivers, and crucially for our bus riders. Many residents rely on our buses, and I think Metro buses as an idea to make them free is a very interesting and important proposal to think about. But we cannot do so at the expense of a really important project for our downtown. What I hear from bus riders consistently is that the greatest problem facing them is a lack of reliability and efficiency, and that's exactly what this project represents. I also want to note that on K Street now, we have about 37 buses an hour that go through it. After the entire revisioning plan is complete, we're expected to have about 50 buses an hour. That's almost one bus a minute traveling through K Street. And if we don't believe that's going to be helpful to not only downtown needs, but our entire bus network, this will affect Columbia Heights bus riders, Benning Road and Minnesota Avenue. And it's so important for the entire network to get this transitway right. I also want to note I strongly disagree with the proposal for congestion pricing, which would implement a $2 fee on rideshare trips in and out of downtown. This fee will be passed on to our consumers and drivers working to provide for their families every day. We do not know if this fee will actually reduce any congestion, but we do know that this fee will penalize people for living or working or spending time in our downtown at a time when we are trying to encourage both of those things. I've heard from a number of Ward 2 residents who have already expressed deep concern that this feels unnecessarily punitive to them and their lives. This plan is going to disincentivize people from working in downtown, returning to the office, which we need to see, spending time in downtown, and living in our downtown. So I call on my fellow council colleagues to find funding elsewhere for other priorities that they have, and recognizing that a thriving downtown is not inevitable. Without a focused investment for our downtown now, we will face the consequences for decades to come. So thank you all for supporting us in this mission.
Thank you, council member. Thank you. Okay, next we're going to hear a little from the DDOT Director, Everett Lott, about specifics of the K Street Transitway, followed by the Executive Director for the Downtown Bid, Jaron Price. Director Lott.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor, and also thank you, Councilmember Pinto, for your leadership and your continued dedication and support for this project. And also, before I get started, let me also thank the DDOT team who's been working on this project for many, many years to get us to this point, and we're really excited about what we've been able to deliver up to this point. My name is Everett Lott, and I am the Director for the District Department of Transportation, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about K Street Transitway and the importance of the compromise in creating it. Again, I want to thank Mayor Bowser for her leadership and her vision to help improve our city and also to help revitalize our downtown corridor. As you all know, and as the Mayor mentioned earlier, the K Street Transitway project is a transformative initiative that will improve our overall transportation network and transportation infrastructure through the core of downtown and beyond. It will also create a dedicated transit lane along K Street Northwest, reducing congestion and improving bus reliability and efficiency, and providing an expanded bicycle infrastructure along L Street Northwest. However, creating the K Street Transitway project has not been an easy task. It's required significant compromise, significant collaboration between various stakeholders in the community, including the transportation officials, local residents, business owners, and community leaders. Initially, we were met with concerns from various stakeholders who understood the long-term goals of the project, but were concerned about the construction and how that would disrupt their operation. We were also met with residents that were concerned about the project and the impact of the project on the environment and the disruption that it would cause to their daily lives. But through the open and honest conversation and dialogue, and willingness to find a way forward, we were able to address those concerns and create a project that provides a benefit to all groups who frequent K Street. And now that we're in the stages of design, and as we prepare this project for construction, we must turn to our DC council members and ask that they retain the funding for this project. DDOT is dedicated to keeping an open dialogue with all of our stakeholders, our partners, and our businesses along the corridor. Ultimately, the K Street Transitway project is an excellent example of what we can achieve when we, as stakeholders and government, come together and work towards a common goal. It also demonstrates the importance of compromise and collaboration in creating projects that provide for the greater good and the future of downtown DC. So with this project, we are expanding multimodal transportation capacity, strengthening the transit access and service, establishing a downtown destination corridor, and supporting the creation of residential nodes and housing downtown. Each of these are critical parts of the mayor's comeback plan. And as we look to the future, we have an opportunity to make the K Street Transitway a model for cities across the country. So today, I urge you to not let this opportunity pass us by. Let's create a project that will improve our community and revitalize our downtown. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. And Jaron Price.
Going to move this microphone up a little bit in hopes that you can hear me. I'm a little taller. But first of all, it's great to see you all. Good afternoon. First, I just want to say thank you so much, Mayor Bowser. I'm so glad to see so many people out here in support of this really important project and in support of making sure that we are not affirming any things that will kill downtown's recovery. It's beautiful to see so many people here in the heart of downtown DC in the beautiful Franklin Park. Many of you know that this park here is the result of intentional investment in improving downtown's public realm. And I want to thank the mayor and the city for just the leadership around making this space possible. And those are exactly the kinds of investments that are necessary to propel the kind of comeback that we know needs to happen to preserve downtown DC as the city's economic engine. As I look around the room, and for those who are joining us online, you are holding this sign that says, "Don't stand in the way of DC's comeback." And I'll tell you, that is so important for us to affirm today as we're here together as a group. We should not allow anything to stand in the way of our city coming back fully. And what this will do by eliminating K Street and eliminating the really important investments in transit efficiency and bus improvements and thinking about all of the ways that people move to and through downtown will absolutely have a net negative impact on downtown's recovery. I also just want to affirm, our council member Brooke Pinto said it, Mayor Bowser said it, but a $2 surcharge, it makes people, discourages them from coming downtown or could potentially detract people from coming and traveling to and through via rideshare. This is not the time to make it less convenient for people to get here. We need as many people to come downtown and support our businesses and our restaurants and frequent our buildings and our parks and our green spaces. We will not have a recovered downtown DC if we don't have an active and efficient and beautiful public realm, and that's exactly what we're here to support today. So I just want to again thank you all for being here. Thank you to everyone who is standing in support of restoring the K Street funding and who are against this $2 surcharge that I think is going to be very negative for our city. Thank you very much.
All right, we can take a few press questions, and please follow my team that has the microphone. Yes.
Hi, Mayor. Could we talk about what happened to the bike lane part of this transitway?
Well, right now we don't have a transit way. If the recommendations of the Transportation Committee are followed, we don't have anything.
Well, Director Lott said this is for all users of the road. I'm just wondering, why was the bicycle lane removed from the project?
We don't have a project if the Transportation Committee's recommendations are upheld.
I'm not sure what that means though. Like,
It
why?
means just what I said. It means we don't have a project unless the council reverses its bad decision in taking over $100 million out of the downtown.
Again, why is there no bicycle lane part of it? I just want to hear the reasoning. Why was it?
Well, I think you heard the reasoning, and the reasoning is we will continue to make adjustments as we do on all transportation projects when we're in the design phase. Yes. Next question.
Mayor, can I ask you to respond to some of the comments that are being made today? Earlier this morning, the council chair made comments saying that the project is missing the mark. If this is something that was long-term and it's not going to be completed for a few years, when revitalization of downtown needs to happen right now. The other comments, not going to say from who, but they're pointing out that you did cut two major circulator bus routes that serve the downtown area with your budget proposal, the McPherson Square to Woodley Park route, which was noted to be the second highest ridership in the circulator system, as well as the Roslyn to DuPont line.
Well, if the council thinks that those lines are important, they can fund them. And so we made decisions using operating dollars that were saved by those routes, which are all of those routes compared to Metro or underperforming routes. And we used the savings from those operating dollars to prevent cuts in operating dollars in other areas of our budget. What we think is very, very bad budget policy is to attempt to convert capital dollars, which K Street funding is, to create operating dollars to fund a brand new entitlement, of which we don't actually know how much it costs. So that's what we're talking about. Now, I understand that the Transportation Committee has recommended restoring one of the circulator routes, but not for the downtown, for the ward served by the Transportation Committee chair.
So you're having a rally here. The chairman, well, the council is going to have its budget discussion on Wednesday. Then they have the vote next week. I mean, what sort of conversations are you having in the Wilson building with the chairman, with the committee chairperson in this case, to see if you can negotiate a compromise? What if they said, listen, put the bike lanes back and we can talk about bringing the whole project back? I mean, what sort of room are you giving to compromise?
Oh,
here?
I don't think anybody cares about the bike lanes at the Wilson building. What they care about is free Metro, creating a new entitlement. So what the chairman also said is that he was talking to business owners and property owners. They didn't say that they wanted the bike lane. So don't make this about bike lanes, because that's not what the council is responding to. And I think it's kind of dangerous to say business owners or property owners or rooms of them don't want transportation projects, because that puts all of our transportation projects on the hook. You know, a lot of business owners on Connecticut Avenue don't want Connecticut Avenue bike lanes, as you know.
Mayor, more specifically on Chairman Mendelson at his news conference today, he specifically said that he's talked with building owners and retail establishments along here who have told him that they don't want it. And he also said by tearing up K Street, it's going to get in the way of downtown coming back.
We strongly disagree, because we have advanced over the last several years during all of the phases of the pandemic and the comeback, major transportation projects. In fact, we were able to do them more quickly. And it does not stand to reason that you want a major project after everybody is back in their offices and we have even more people on the road. The time to do it is exactly right now. And it's also not the time, as you know, Jaron put it more eloquently, we're talking about making a beautiful addition to our public realm in the downtown, where the street itself will become a destination. And I argue that the discussions with future tenants is about the next iteration of the downtown, not the gridlock that they currently have in front of their buildings. So I think to suggest that having major construction when you have even more people on the road just really speaks to a lack of understanding about what folks are doing to get tenants in their buildings.
Question for Councilmember Pinto.
Yeah.
What has been the conversation with your council colleagues who took money away from the Transitway? And if we are to fund the Transitway, where would those funds come from? What particular projects or initiatives do you see being sacrificed to make that possible?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for the question. I have either spoken with, met with, or reached out to 100% of my council colleagues. As the mayor mentioned, the mechanism to fund this project was done in a very irregular way, which was that the $115 million in operating costs were essentially traded for capital dollars. Excuse me, the inverse, thank you. It was a capital project and they were traded for operating dollars, which I am not aware of ever doing something like that for a project this size in the city. And so at a starting ground, I think we need to go back to maintain the funding for where it was as a capital project for K Street. And then we can have a conversation if there are other funding priorities that colleagues are very interested in. I will just say, in terms of the free buses, I think it's a great idea. I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done to see if we're in a place as a city to move forward in that way, and that it would be premature to take funding for a project that we don't have assurance is going to be able to be implemented. So that's kind of part of my conversations with my colleagues going forward right now, and hoping that we can resolve some of this as we head into our budget work session on Wednesday.
Quick follow-up. So what happened in terms of in your mind, when the free buses were approved late last year, between then and now, in terms of funding, if there was a commitment? I know we heard from Bowser, from the mayor about that, but in your mind, why wouldn't that be feasible even with the council approving it late last year?
So what the council approved late last year was a certification for funds in the event that we had surplus funds in a future budget. And that certification did not go through. I was uneasy with it at the time because I don't think that that's a responsible way to make budget decisions. But it happened, and those funds are not available now to be utilized for this purpose.
Thank you for doing this. My question has to do with the people in the back of the press conference, the folks. She wants me to introduce myself. I'm Evan Kozloff from Channel 9. Folks in the back of the press conference here holding up signs, Mayor Bowser saying that they want these bike lanes. The Washington Area Bicyclists Association is saying they want you to go back to the planning board. I know your main focus, you said it before, is that you want to get the funding first. But if you win that battle and get the funding, do you support having bike lanes on K Street?
We support an adjustment, and that's the adjustment we are talking about. I think what's important is that we have critical parts of our infrastructure in the downtown completed. Just like I completed a much talked about north-south or easternmost north-south lane that affects the downtown on 9th Street. And so that's what we're talking about. So we will make an adjustment from K Street to L Street, but that critical part of the bike lane system will be complete.
Just to clarify, so what would that look like on L Street? Is it going to be wide bike lanes?
I think we're still designing. Let me have Everett talk about that in particular.
Yeah, thank you for the question. The bike lane on L Street, again, was part of a compromise as well when we're going through this process. What it will consist of is a two-way cycle track on L Street. Right now, L Street does have an existing bicycle facility that goes in one direction eastbound. So what we would do is we expand that and make it a two-way cycle track going in both directions from essentially 10th Street all the way up to 21st Street.
Annalisa with DC News Now here, Mayor. What is the plan in terms of staying on the transportation beat for carjackings? It's 2 times the amount it was last year. Even yesterday I saw in the scanner a gruesome carjacking attack. What is the plan there?
The plan is to make sure we're very focused on, in some cases, Annalisa, small bands of people, frequently juvenile, some DC residents, some from other jurisdictions, who are committing these carjackings. We want to get to them before But we also, when we make arrests, we want to make sure that they are held accountable. You know that we have a carjacking task force that is bi-jurisdictional, so we will continue to work on that. Part of the hotspot strategy that the chief announced next week and that I will weekly go over with MPD, those areas are informed by areas of carjacking concern as well. So none of us are satisfied, I can tell you that, with the amount of activity. I was with judges on Friday where we talked about accountability in our system. And we are hosting a summit among the professionals in the public safety ecosystem next week, where we will have a concentrated discussion around young people and how we are approaching them in our criminal justice system.
Hey, the rendering you all released ahead of this event appeared to show more car lanes as part of the K Street Transitway project. I've spoken with folks in the transportation world who say that, you know, they would be inclined to support this project, but increasingly it seems like there's more of a focus on cars, less on the bus, pedestrians, and bikes. I guess I'm curious what you would say to them to, you know, help build support for what you're arguing for here.
Well, we've been talking about the transformation of K Street for a number of years, and the status quo is unacceptable. The amount of time that people are wasting stuck in traffic, the gridlock that the buses themselves face. We know the best way to attract people out of cars. That's why we are installing bus lanes all across the downtown and the city. And everybody supports it, from the downtown interest to neighborhoods across this district. People want bus lanes because it's real simple to figure that we can't attract people to the bus if they're sitting in the same traffic that they would be sitting in their own vehicle, where they can control the temperature, the noise, the radio, and all of that. So to attract people to public transit, we have to compete with that. And one way to compete with that is to shave time off of the bus rides. And that is the promise of K Street. And I was reminded last week that Metro has been working on it for the past 2 years, their Better Bus Initiative. And that's focused on all the frequencies in our downtown and how we not only improve frequency on K Street, but throughout our system. And it's built around our promise of the K Street Transitway. So not having that would really require them also to go back to the drawing board.
Off topic?
Yep.
So, Mayor Bowser, I have a couple of questions about auto enforcement for traffic speeding, red light. And
Okay,
stop signs.
I don't know that I'm going to have all the answers, but I'll
you'll
try.
have plenty of good answers, I'm sure. So we first started this discussion after the triple fatal in Rock Creek Park, where it was determined that one of the cars involved had more than 40 outstanding tickets, tens of thousands of dollars in outstanding tickets. And as it turns out, that's not uncommon, and actually not even close to being the worst offender in that realm. What do you say to the public who will learn that there are tens of thousands of people who are cars who have thousands and thousands, in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars in outstanding fines for auto enforcement, and just aren't paying them, and are still on the road and clearly making the roads less safe?
Well, Mark, we have, I don't take the situation lightly because we don't want scofflaws of the law in any area, whether it's parking tickets, whether it's people who are committing violent crimes. We think we have to hold the people accountable for following the law. We have impaneled under the city administrator's guidance a committee that's really focused on fines, the collection of fines, and making sure they're both effective and just. And so that committee is going to deliver some recommendations to me. Now, it is also important that we deploy our resources, our public safety resources, even more in a more streamlined way, given the availability of officers. So right now we're not deploying officers to chase down cars that have thousands of dollars in violations. Certainly we can boot, we can tow, and we can develop different ways of thinking about how to get to those cars that don't include the police.
Can I ask you why?
Sure.
And this was kind of the social media discussion after this revelation, after the triple fate on Rock Creek, was there does not seem to be enforcement. And it seems like people, as you call them, scofflaws, get away with this. And for instance, the car and the Lexus involved in the Rock Creek was a DC tag. I mean, is there any thought to prioritizing the offenders by how many outstanding tickets they go, and then go to their house and get their car there rather than just randomly hoping they find it parked on K Street somewhere?
I think there could be a number of different strategies that are offered, Mark. So I don't want to get ahead of the work of either the committee that's focused on how we're dealing with fines, but it's also a part of our thinking when we think of police resources. What I can't do is send one of my DPW workers in a confrontational situation over a car and pay tickets. And so I want to be able to talk amongst our team about the people who have both the power to remove vehicles, but will also be safe in the process.
All right, last question.
This is actually back to the K Street Transit Way.
Okay.
And this is kind of just getting in the weeds. It could be for you or for the director.
Okay,
but
you got it.
if the funding were to be restored, how quickly would people start seeing shovels in the ground? Like, how quickly would construction start and how long would it last? And then is there a mechanism, because there was a complaint on 8th Street during the streetcar construction, and anytime there is construction, businesses will invariably say, listen, my business is crashing because no one can get through to my front door. Does DC have a mechanism to ensure that once K Street construction happens, if it were to happen, that those businesses could be made whole or helped?
Well, certainly we're not going from 100% occupancy in those businesses, or unfortunately you heard from April earlier. This is another reason to go now and not later, because we think there's actually less impact on filled storefronts and businesses. The first part of your question was timeline. Everett, could I have you speak to that?
Sure. Thanks again, Mayor. This project is about ready to go in terms of the design. As I referenced earlier, we're making some modifications based on some of the conversations and compromise with the stakeholders to modify and add the bike lane. So that's the part that we're still designing now on L Street. And so we anticipate that if we're able to restore the funding, that we'll be able to go to final design and to contract sometime later on this year, hopefully in the fall. That process for the bid process and the procurement process will take roughly about 4 to 6 months. And so we're looking at potentially being able to have shovels in the ground sometime around this time next year, a little bit later next year in 24.
And how long? When would it finish? Like, when does the project? How long is the timeline?
We're anticipating about 3 years. The way that we have the project planned out right now, which again is our efforts to make sure that we're mitigating the impact to the businesses along the corridor. We have 3 phases, 3 segments. Each segment we would start and finish one segment before we started the next segment. So this segment from 10th to about 15th Street would be segment 1. We would start the work in the construction project there. We would complete the construction and project there before we went on to segment 2. So that's how we're talking about mitigating the project. Also, we will work into the proposal and the contract disincentive clauses and incentive clauses. The incentives are for the contractors to be able to complete the project as soon as possible and quicker ahead of schedule. The disincentives is if they did not meet that timeline, then they actually would have to pay us back. So we're working a lot of different proposals and projects in ways that we can help to mitigate the impact and speed up the construction project. And the last thing I'll add to that is that we've also looked at doing some night work along different parts of the corridor where we do not have any residential or potential impacts to some of the folks that may be staying in residential areas. So that's the timeline. Thank you very much.
Last question.
Hey, it's a regional transportation question. There's a new coalition, including Delta. They want to add more long-haul flights out of Reagan National. Do you have an opinion on that? Any changes to Reagan's National's flight limits?
I'm not familiar with that, so let me find out what's going on. Obviously, we've worked very hard and long to make sure bigger, heavier aircraft that tend to create a lot of noise for us are managed properly. So we would engage in that conversation with the Congresswoman and with our federal partners. But I don't know specifically about it yet. All right. Thank you, everybody.